The Dungeon Master is supposed to host the story and world of a D&D game, so the players can experience a fulfilling adventure. This is the story of what happens when a DM hosts both the world and blatantly cheats to create a character that overpowers the rest of the party and takes control of the story. This is genuinely one of the stupidest things I've read in a very long time. Check it out. This video is of course sponsored by Questhaven. Questhaven is a tabletop RPG platform for playing D&D and similar games in both PC and VR. It's an environment that provides the needed tools for a great adventure. Players can dive into their character and experience the world from a new perspective while seeing the maps and monsters in real scale. Build large continuous worlds and fill them with NPCs and plot hooks, or easily grab maps made by others. Control the weather, season, and lighting. Dungeon Masters will be able to immerse their players by setting the mood with music, environment, and sound effect controls. Bring the party together into Questhaven, where both PC and VR users will be able to cross-play seamlessly and make adventures happen. Questhaven invites all crabs to their taverns and asks for support as they have just launched their Kickstarter. I'll see you there. Roll post. So this happened a few years ago now. Pathfinder had been out for a little bit and we were all fairly excited for it. I had been DMing for quite a bit and my game was coming to a close. So when one of my players volunteered to DM the next campaign, I was thrilled. He said we would be allowed monster races as well, but nothing over CR4. Starting level was 7, so we would have a few character levels on top of it. This was shaping up to be an amazing time. I agonized a bit, but decided to play a Chain Devil, one of my favorite monsters because of the lore. For those of you who don't know Chain Devil lore, the quickest way to explain it would be that they have a penchant for torture, pain, and chains like Pinhead, mixed with Freddy Krueger's lust for fear. It's all really cool and I could go on, but let's get back to the real horror at hand. Or Claw. Most of the party played CR1 monsters so they could get the most out of their level, but I enjoyed the flavor of my sorcerer as well as the huge AC boost. At the start of the game, we were told that the DM would be adding in a DMPC to help us along. Now, I never did this because it always felt wrong to me, but to each their own. A DMPC is when the DM has a character they created to join the party as if it was a normal player. This is pretty difficult to pull off effectively, but it can be done. Of course, this DM is going to run this DMPC into the ground, as we're about to see. The DMPC was a Centaur Holy Warrior, apparently a homebrew class by the DM that combined everything from Fighter, Cleric, and Paladin into one. And I mean everything. All of the spells, all of the powers, everything they got from their class was given to this monstrosity to the point we couldn't really compare. I figured he was doing this so just in case we got in over our heads, the Centaur would jump in and help where needed. I gave him too much credit. This is the most ham-fisted failure at multiclassing anyone's ever seen. In the rules as written, you can take one class level each time you level up. A level 3 character could have 2 levels in Bard and 1 in Fighter, or any other arrangement. Taking all of the abilities of 3 already powerful classes and forcing them into your weird self-insert is what happens when the DM has main character syndrome. It's not enough that you run the world, you also need to run the party, ruining the campaign and taking the story away from the players. But I digress. This Centaur was always the center of attention. We would play for about 3 hours and most of the time was spent with him having other NPCs fawn over this Centaur. Talk about how famous he was, how handsome he was, how charming, and how lucky we were to have such a hero at our sides. Getting frustrated early, I asked to see the sheet. The DM was more than happy to show off his work. The numbers were stupid. His attack was so high it was obvious the DM just combined the attack bonus from all of the classes instead of giving the normal. His AC was a 30, better than our monks by far, and he didn't have a single stat below 16. The DM saying, "Oh yeah, I totally rolled well and got super lucky and rolled all 18s and won 17, yeah." Now, the monster conversations meant that we were all strong, but this thing was just out there. His HP didn't add up unless he rolled max and then was given an extra 100 on top of that. All in all, this was cheating, but again, he's the DM, this is his game, whatever. Hilarious. It's been a while since we, the Crab crew, have dug up a DM so intent on jacking himself off behind the screen. But look what the Crab dragged in. Somebody who is incredibly full of himself while having no actual self-awareness. And believe it or not, he somehow gets even more unbearable, just you watch and wait. The fights were not any better since the Centaur always won initiative, and if it was a single opponent, he would solo the fight. There was one new player to the game while the rest of us were veterans to the game, and I felt bad for this girl because she thought this is how it was supposed to be. Taking notes and hanging on the DM's every word while the rest of us slowly lost interest. I looked around the table at session 4 and everyone was either on their phones or talking amongst themselves about movies, anime, or joking around, while the DM was having a conversation with himself. And the new player was watching, wide-eyed. The DM didn't even notice when I said to everyone, "Okay, who's sick of the Centaur?" Everyone agreed, and after that session, the new player also agreed she'd like to do something without him around. Since the entire 3 hours were spent with us in our own discussions and the DM having no clue while he RP'd a romance scene between his Centaur and an NPC barmaid, to which he thought was one of the best games ever. I can see it now. The DM has both of his figurines in hand, making them talk sweet at each other and kiss, while everybody else at the table is awkwardly sitting there watching. It's a funny scene.
Darling, hold me close, the barmaid says. Then I say, come on, baby, let us be rid of these weird players who are a captive audience for my fanfic.
The whole thing reads like when Ice King was reading Fiona and Cake to the captured princesses in Adventure Time, but that's just my opinion. We need to get busy with the players that are going to try and escape the Centaur, but they need to suffer for it. The next session opened up with us waking up, and we told the DM we were waking up early so we could ditch the Centaur and go on with the current quest. A bit of talk later, and I figured we got it through the DM's head that we were not having fun watching the Centaur show. He allowed us to ditch the Centaur and go on our way. We spent the next 3 hours slogging through tough encounters, having to use everything we could just to stay alive, and feeling pretty good about ourselves at the end of it, having rescued some captives from demonic forces. We weren't given any loot because how he ran it is demons and devils, if they die on the plane of existence, they get transported back to their home plane. That was fine until he awarded us a mere 100 XP for finishing the quest. At our level, that was nothing. And for the fights we had, I was a bit miffed, but I figured he was just hurt that we ditched the DM NPC. We were all a little mad, but hey, we wouldn't have to deal with the Centaur anymore, so this was a win. I guarantee you the DM was trying to punish the players for daring to leave his epic self-insert Centaur behind. He was expecting the players to go, "Whoa, this game is so hard, I wish someone with god powers would save us." But what the DM actually got was more like, "Wow, it's actually really cool that we can play the game and win our battles for ourselves." Of course, the DM was not done being the biggest douche self-insert just yet. That was until we got to the next town. The DM goes into his normal, excited voice to proclaim the Centaur is waiting for us. A huge groan spreads along the table. He then describes the Centaur as having all new gear because he wasn't powerful enough, enchanted armor which ups his AC, an enchanted sword that deals all elemental damage as well as poison and force, and an array of magic items that make him near godhood, as well as sacks of gold as saddlebags. He then proclaims, "Great work on splitting up. Because of you causing a distraction, I was able to find the real culprits of the kidnapping and free the town from their clutches. It's nice you found the stragglers, though." And then he goes on to have the town fawning over him as the hero who saved the day. This is all so wrong. The DM is supposed to facilitate a story for the players, not the DM's personal fantasy. The DM has control over the entire world. They do not need to control the direction of the party entirely.
Haha, guys, you tried to escape, but even when you think you've accomplished anything, you'll never be free from under my self-insert weird fucking stupid centaur character's shadow.
It's so comically cringe, I can't do it. Just roll post, let's finish this. We vent our frustrations, and the DM tells us, well, if you would have stayed with him, you would have known his god gave him instructions to find the real enemy, and you would have gotten more XP. Because you left, he got solo XP and was able to level up 8 times. We had it, and as much as I hate player versus DM stuff and we talk about communication, we all told him how much we dislike this character and how we were given no real RP time. So I didn't feel bad for attacking the centaur. Of course, the DM tried to say I couldn't possibly hit, so I called his bluff. I had built my guy to be a powerhouse of his own, and I had actual math on my side. I questioned everything in this homebrew build that he made, and made him spell out numbers which it was clear he was making up on the fly. Once we had it settled that not only we could hit this thing, but we could damage it, the group joined in to kill this monstrosity. Even the new player had it with this thing. We fought, and even with all the healing spells that went over what anyone else could cast at that level, even with 3 classes stacked, we pushed on. I, of course, being the one to start it, took the brunt of the damage, but being a chain devil, I didn't die. According to his own rules, I just went home, so I could easily come back 2 turns later, so no healing was given to me by my request. I would be the damage sponge and let everyone else end this. Time for our favorite game here on the channel, What Happens Next? Today's options are A. The DM cheats and wrecks the party with some dumb underhanded maneuvers, or B. The party somehow wins the battle. Of course, as usual, there's an entire sand dollar on the line, so without further ado, let's find out. Finally, the centaur lay dead in the street, and we stood over it triumphant. So, how much XP for it? The new player asked, all happy that she was able to get the final blow. The DM. As you stand over the body, the clouds part. A heavenly light shines down, wreathing the fallen hero in its glow. His body rises up, floating on the rays of sparkling sunlight. A burst of energy pushes everyone back as you hear the words of each good deity echo through the world. Never a truer hero was born to this world. For all he has done, we cannot let this travesty take place. Henceforth, this one shall have life everlasting. Rise again, O divine hero, as a demigod. The DM then describes how his new centaur looks with a glowing mane that is always flowing, how he forgives the party for being foolish and following the words of a devil. He has the centaur destroy my character. Just reaches out, grabs my sheet, and rips it up. No save, no discussion. My devil is just dead. He says we can continue on now, and explains his centaur is now level 50, so he'll just have to do math on that, I guess. Everyone turns to me as I'm face-palming, and I hear one person ask, so, do you need a break, or do you have any ideas for a game? I tell them I have ideas for games, and it'll take a week to set up the first session. Everyone at the table, except the DM, of course, agrees I'll be the DM next week. And I tell them I'll post in a couple of days character generation. The current DM looks at us shocked and asks, what's wrong? He showed up and made a character for my game, and I had to check his sheet every session because between sessions he would alter numbers. But the group stayed together for a good while. The new player even got into DMing later on. TLDR, player becomes DM and creates a world where he is the center of attention and ignores his party so that he can stroke his ego. It's so rich that the DM acts all surprised and taken aback that the people who just tried to end him are unsatisfied with a literal Deus ex machina swooping down and saving his stupid DMPC. The DM didn't want to actually play D&D in the first place. He wanted to show off his OC to a group of people. Not only that, but his stupid power fantasy was cheap as hell, like Superman but more boring. Anyways, for more tales of dumb D&D players and even worse games, click one of these funny boxes. Till next time.